Campus. Let me encourage you to turn your cell phones to quiet or airplane or whatever will keep it from disturbing others. I apologize for the late start, and some of you may have gone over Griswold. First, we did advertise it as being here, but this is a new venue for us. Griswold was just not available, so here we are. And this is our first run in this room, so we're learning things, and I appreciate your patience with that as we work through those matters. But I think now we can go ahead and get started. You will notice as you came in, there are some, there were some young folks with surveys, and those are for our co-sponsor, the Institute for Humane Studies. We also have pencils. If you don't have any way to fill those out, you're welcome to take one of those. Please do us a favor and fill that out. That's important for us, and it's important for our co-sponsor, the Institute for Humane Studies, and we will draw one name to win a $25 gift card from Amazon. So that's an incentive for you, obviously, to turn those in. The Institute for Humane Studies is located in Arlington, Virginia. It advances a free society by facilitating development of students and scholars who share an interest in liberty. And if you have any questions about IHS programs, please feel free to contact me. Also, the event would not be possible without generous support from the John Templeton Foundation. The Templeton Foundation serves as a philanthropic catalyst for discoveries related to the big questions of human purpose and ultimate reality. This is our second in a series of lectures titled The Great Society at 50, marking the 50th anniversary of the so-called Great Society that Lyndon Johnson launched in his presidency. Our first lecture was by Rachel Sheffield, and our third will be April 20th with Chris Marin from the Acton Institute, who will be speaking on alternatives to the Great Society. And also, while I have your attention, I'd like to invite you to our second to last program, which is Grant and Lee in War and Peace. It's a separate program, and it's with William Davis, who is author and editor of over 50 books on the Civil War. And he will be here on March 31st, and I believe we're back in this room. On April 20th, we're back in the Griswold Lecture Hall. So it's now been 50 years since the start of the Great Society and 80 years since the start of the New Deal. And America has devoted trillions of dollars to, as President Johnson put it, winning an unconditional war on poverty. Our first speaker told us that we are quite far from declaring victory in that war. In fact, it is difficult to discern what, if any, effect the welfare state programs have had on alleviating the scourge of poverty and its accompanying ills. What's more, programs with nobler objectives, such as some of the programs in the New Deal or the Great Society, are now joined by much more questionable programs, those providing aid not to the poor, but to the middle class, wealthy seniors, or corporations. And this leads us to ask bigger questions, not just about the welfare state, but about democracy itself. Is it even possible to have sensible programs in a democracy at all? That question is hardly new. It's as old as antiquity and political society itself. Nevertheless, in light of new political analysis by economists such as our guest, it is worth revisiting again. Our speaker tonight is Professor Bryan Caplan. Dr. Caplan is Professor of Economics at George Mason University and Senior Scholar at the Medicaid Center. He's the author of The Myth of the Rational Voter, Why Democracies Choose Bad Policies. Let's see why he's here tonight. Named the best political book of the year by the New York Times, and Selfish Reasons to Have More Kids, Why Being a Great Parent is Less Work and More Fun Than You Think. He has been published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the American Economic Review, the Economic Journal, the Journal of Law and Economics and Intelligence, and has appeared on 2020, Fox News, and C-SPAN. He's now working on a new book, The Case Against Education. We're very pleased to have him here tonight, and after Bryan's lecture, we'll have time for Q&A, and after that, I invite you to join us for a reception out in the hallway that will be provided later. So I invite you to join us for that. And again, please don't forget to turn in your surveys if you're a student. And with that, please join me in welcoming Professor Bryan.
Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you very much, Northwood University, for having me come talk to you. This is actually a totally new talk. I've never given this talk before. So other people are going to get it, but you're getting it first, which means you have the most opportunities to improve it. Eventually, this is probably going to become part of a book that is about 3 books down my queue, which will be called Poverty, Who to Blame? No question mark, just poverty, who to blame. It will be a book of answers. So the topic I was asked to speak on is Are We Stuck with the Great Society? Which, when I was first asked the question, I said, yeah, well, it's a good question. Are we stuck with the Great Society? So I wrote this talk to find out. So the first question that I had in mind when I began writing this is, which Great Society are we even talking about? So there is a narrow definition of the Great Society, which, as mentioned, so this is the 50th anniversary of the Great Society. So we think of it as only the new social programs pushed through by President Lyndon Johnson, who was president from 1964 to 1968. Right, so, well, actually, it was 63, yeah, it should be 63. All right, so and these programs would be Medicare. Right, so heavily subsidized medical care for retirees, Medicaid, so heavily subsidized medical care for the poor, as well as people who have strategically depleted their assets so they are now poor at the time that they need money. So there was an expansion of Social Security during this period. So Social Security already existed, but it was expanded during the Great Society. Then there was an expansion of AFDC, which is Aid to Families with Dependent Children. This program has been subsequently replaced with a related program. Food stamps, and then also student loans. So federal student loan programs largely date from this era as well. And so we could just limit ourselves to that. But you could also have a broad definition. You could think of the Great Society as encompassing all the greatness. So encompassing all the stuff Lyndon Johnson did, plus all the stuff that came before, plus all the stuff that came after that was inspired by the original programs. So in other words, you could define the Great Society as just being all federal welfare state programs. So that would include everything that I mentioned above, plus Social Security in general, which did predate the Great Society. So as Glenn mentioned, that was established about 80 years ago during the New Deal. Then TANF and SNAP, so temporary assistance to needy families and supplemental nutrition, something. Right, so these are the key programs that have replaced AFDC and some other programs. Then federal support for higher education in general. Right, and furthermore, federal grants to help fund state welfare states. Is also an important part, and it's actually part of the welfare reform of the 90s was to take money that previously had been given directly by the federal government and give it as grants to the states to do what they want with it. Right, so in general, whenever I'm given a choice of addressing a broader question and a narrower question, I always like to go broad, so I'm going to stick with this broad definition route. Now, just to get an idea of what the budget even looks like, here is a pie chart from 2010. Just what does federal spending even look like? These are the kinds of questions that most people have a lot of trouble getting remotely right. A lot of people want to say that foreign aid is one of the largest items in the budget. Actually, there is a famous survey where they gave people 6 items in the federal budget and then said, name the 2 that are biggest. And foreign aid was actually the single most popular answer, even though it's about 1% of the budget. Right, so what is in the federal budget, just to get an idea? This is from 2010, but things are gradually moving more in the direction of more spending for the elderly because the population is aging. All right, so back then we had Social Security about 20% of the budget, National Defense about 20%, Medicare at 13%, Medicaid / CHIP at 8.1%, interest at 5.7%, low-income assistance 5.3%, everything else 27.4%. Right, so that is a rough breakdown of the federal budget. Okay. So now, going back to the question. So I asked to speak on, are we stuck with a great society? When you think about it, that is a highly loaded question. Are we stuck with gravity? Or are we stuck with Disneyland? It makes it sound like Disneyland's bad. If you ask, are we stuck with Disneyland? You might say, Disneyland's great. We hope Disneyland will stay around forever. Okay, so this was a suggested title of my talk, is Are We Stuck with a Great Society? Which I will freely say, it is a loaded question. It is a question that is designed to lead you to the answer of, at least, wow, this is terrible. What can we do about it, if anything? So, you can't be stuck with something unless it's bad. Normally, I guess you could think of some way where you might be stuck with something good, but you're stuck with two hands or something. But anyway, so now the Great Society slogan is nearly dead. Like most people have no idea what you're talking about when you say the Great Society anymore. And so, well, who could be against greatness? Are you against society or against greatness? Well, then we're for the Great Society. So, of course, it was a slogan. It's capitalized. It's Great Society trademark. Right? But anyway, the slogan's dead. But the cost-based programs in the Great Society, so especially Social Security and Medicare, enjoy very strong bipartisan support. And it's important to realize this. Many people think of the Great Society as just being the kind of thing that Democrats support. It's not. You may remember a famous sign in recent years, keep government hands off my Medicare. Right, so this is an anti-Obama sign, almost certainly a pro-Republican sign saying that Medicare is wonderful and I don't want government messing with it. Again, it is a government program, so if government is doing it, it's something like it can't even exist without government doing something with it. Right, anyway, so these programs enjoy strong bipartisan support, and actually in recent years there has been a partisan phase shift where Republicans are now much more widely seen as being the pro-Social Security and even the pro-Medicare party. So, worth realizing this. Right, anyway, so I can't begin to answer the invited question until I argue that contrary to popular belief, these programs are in fact bad. So it would seem that only otherwise you would just be preaching to the choir or maybe preaching to a hostile choir without bothering to even address their concerns. So I now am going to have a big detour just dealing with the question of why would anyone be against the Great Society in the first place? Right, it sounds good. The programs are popular. What's the problem? Now, unfortunately, this is not a problem we'd argue because I do think that the Great Society is terrible. So I was picked to give this talk for a reason. All right, so what in the world is so terrible about it? By the way, if you know the children's story, Alexander and the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, that was the... I kind of wanted to work on the title, but I decided to just stick with what we have. All right. So let's just begin with a simple point. That universal programs are absurd. All right, what does this mean? Right, so suppose you think the government should heavily fund programs to alleviate American poverty. And that is, of course, the propaganda of what the Great Society is about, the war on poverty. We are going to make a total war on the problem of poverty. Right? But even if that were your view, you should actually still oppose a majority of Great Society spending. Why? Well, let's actually go to the numbers rather than the rhetoric. Just take a look at most Great Society spending programs. Most of the money goes to the old, not the poor. Aren't old people poor? Some of them. On average, they're actually richer than the rest of the population. So this is a very strange thing. They are universal programs. What is a universal program? It's a program that takes care of everyone. Even Bill Gates gets Social Security. Bill Gates is eligible for Medicare. Will he bother collecting the Medicare? It doesn't matter. But he's allowed to go and get the benefits. Right? He is fully entitled to collect this benefit just like anybody else. All right, now, so far I may just be digging myself into a deeper hole. So we have programs that take care of each and every American. And you're against that? Yes, absolutely. All right, so taking care of everyone, it sounds wonderful, but it's crazy. It is crazy to take care of everyone. Why? Well, because most people are perfectly able to take care of themselves. So why the government program to take care of everyone if most people can take care of themselves all by themselves? What is the point of taxing everybody to take care of everyone when most of the people that you were taking care of could have taken care of themselves on their own, especially if they had time to plan ahead? So most people take care of themselves, especially if, first of all, they have decades to prepare. And being elderly is one of the most predictable things in the world. It is something that is the definite outcome unless something really bad happens to you. So either You die young, in which case you don't need the programs, or time passes, you become old, and then you have the problems that are associated with being elderly. So it is a very foreseeable problem. It is one that, in fact, is going to happen to everyone as long as we're lucky. So it's a problem that everyone would be lucky to actually face, to be elderly. So if you have decades to prepare, then it is fairly easy for most people to take care of themselves. How do you do it? Well, you save. You save when you are young, working, and you put the money into an investment account, and then there's the money to retire on. Furthermore, also if you can buy insurance. So if you can buy insurance, you have time to plan ahead, so you can pay the premiums before you are elderly, the premiums are really high. Then again, you have taken care of yourself. And if you can take care of yourself, the argument for a government program to take care of you is fairly hard to understand. Now, many people think, well, sure, it's kind of silly to have government have everyone take care of everyone. There's something fictional and bizarre about it. You just imagine if you're a family of 2 parents and 4 kids, and you say, you know what, in this family, we all take care of everyone. So, look, really, it's the parents who take care of the kids. That's what's actually happening. And if you were to go and say we're going to make the kids take care of the parents, what's the point? Look, the parents are taking care of themselves and the kids. What is the point of having this fiction about so we are all providing for everyone? Like the kids are receiving, the parents are contributing. Right? But anyway, so you might say, well, yeah, it seems kind of silly, but it's just an accounting fiction. So yeah, it's just an accounting fiction because we go and we take money from everyone, we give money back to everyone. What's the big deal? But when you think about it, it is not actually just an accounting fiction because in order to have the programs, you have to tax people. Right? So you have to tax people. Furthermore, knowing that you are going to be provided for retirement it also tends to change behavior. So the taxes to pay for everyone change behavior, discouraging work, discouraging investments. Furthermore, knowing you'll be provided for later in life is a reason to not take care of yourself now. So the fact that if you were to save now or were to purchase long-term insurance now, you would not need it when you were retired. Well, if you know that it's going to be taken care of for you then it's a reason for you to not worry so much about taking care of yourself. Right, so helping everyone is more than an accounting fiction, so it discourages work, both because taxes are higher on the entire population when you're taxing them to provide for all elderly people. Secondly, of course, as long as the benefits are structured so that when you're retired, you get more money if you stop working, they also encourage people to retire at an earlier age. So if you know anyone who's taken early Social Security payments, as society ages, the obvious thing is it's more important for people to retire later, so that you are working for a larger percentage of your life. So if only 5% of your population is working, that's going to be a terrible problem. And so if the population starts to age, it is socially desirable to have retirement ages go later, whereas programs tend to make them go earlier. Right? So it discourages work, discourages savings. Again, because first of all, when your savings are taxed in order to pay for the programs, that discourages savings. And secondly, when you know that you will be provided for to a fairly good degree during retirement, there's a reason not to save now. Another thing that matters for having kids. Right? So, if you can imagine a retirement program where the benefits that you got were proportional to the number of kids you had. Having 4 kids, it sounds like a great idea. All right. However, that is not the way that virtually any country on earth operates. Now, what this means is that since the way the retirement programs work, they are a pyramid scheme. If you have a lot of young people paying taxes to support a small number of elderly people, then low taxes can provide high pensions. But if you have a small number of young people supporting a lot of retirees, then you need enormous taxes even to sustain modest benefits. Right? So the way the system is set up, there is the payment that you get has nothing to do with the number of kids that you have. Even though people who have more kids do contribute much more to taking care of elderly than people who have fewer kids or no kids at all. Right? And then furthermore discourages working past retirement age. Right? So if there's a legal retirement age where you start collecting benefits, and especially if those benefits are reduced, if you don't retire at the official time, this encourages people to retire at the official time, when in fact it is more and more necessary for people to work later in life. And of course, the argument for retiring early makes a lot more sense when people are doing things like farming than when they have desk jobs. So back when people were farmers, it's much easier to understand why they would want to retire at 65. If you're just going to a desk or if you're a professor, then why not work till 70, 75? So my plan is to retire, is to never retire. I'm just going to keep lecturing until I die, teaching your grandkids the same stuff. One day, great grandkids, hopefully. Right, so that is my dream, right, to die in the classroom. All right, but as society ages, it is more and more important for more people to have that attitude of wanting to work to a ripe old age, or to say, well, why would I ever want to stop? I can still be productive, I can still contribute. All right, now due to aging of the population, these programs that already are quite expensive are going to keep getting more expensive. So the Congressional Budget Office predicts by 2035, Social Security's share of GDP will rise by 20%. So it's not 20 percentage points, it's 20%, but that is 20% over an enormous amount. Right? And Medicare is actually going to double. Medicare is actually going to double as a share of GDP. Why would it double? Well, all you need to do is combine the aging of the population with some reasonable forecast about what will happen to healthcare costs, put those together, and you get this estimated doubling, which is very expensive. Already very expensive. Okay. All right, now is there an alternative? Yes, there is a very simple, logical, clean, neat alternative, and this is means testing. Means testing. So what is the idea of means testing? Is to have cheap programs that help the very poor, non-expensive programs that help everyone. So instead of people paying taxes to give stuff to 100% of the population eventually, you can have people paying a much smaller amount of taxes to give money to only, say, the bottom fifth of the population. Only the fifth needs the population, or it doesn't have to be a fifth, could be a tenth, right? Could be the bottom fourth, but some much more narrowly targeted benefits and people who are actually poor. Right? So it's a very simple idea, but and one that for many programs we are already totally used to. So, for example, you have school lunch programs. School lunch programs don't give lunches to every kid in the country. And what would be the point? Most kids already have parents who are doing the lunches. So why would it be necessary or even sensible to raise taxes to go and pay to give every single kid a lunch when most of the kids already have a lunch without going to the program in the first place? So we think about something like a school lunch program. We already have means testing for that. Right? There's already means testing for food stamps. Imagine someone is saying, it would be great if the government provided food for every single person in the country. Why would that be great? Most people in the country are taking care of themselves right now. As a result, we don't have to have enormous taxes to go pay to feed Bill Gates' dinner every day. Instead, we can have a small program that takes care of a small percentage of the population. Everybody else is on their own, which is fine because they are able to take care of themselves. They are grown-ups, and that's what they do. Okay, so this is an alternative, and very often when I push this forward, people say, "Oh no, I don't like that idea." I say, "Well, do you want to stop means testing all the stuff that we currently means test?" You don't get to meet someone who bites that bullet. Actually, I have one friend who does. One friend, yeah, absolutely everything. Everyone should be equally able to get every government program. Do you have any idea how much that would cost to make every person in the country equally eligible for every program that exists? And what would taxes have to be in order to do that? Very plausibly, it would be something like doubling the taxes. I mean, what would be the point? Government would then go and give to people, give everyone in the country stuff that most of the people have managed to earn through their own initiative. So what would the point possibly be? Now, if we were to systematically replace expensive universal programs with cheap means-tested programs, this would make the modern welfare state almost unrecognizably small. So again, just imagine if we were to limit eligibility for all these programs to only the bottom fifth of the population. Then for most of the programs, remember these are the most expensive programs. Why don't we quickly just go back to the pie chart. All right, so look, low-income assistance by itself, that's only 5.3% of the budget. The big items, so Social Security, 20%, Medicare, 13%. All right, so Medicaid. So Medicaid is officially means tested, although it is means tested in a particularly silly way. Namely that, only about a third of it goes to pay for nursing homes, and a large number of people who are middle class in their lives don't manage to get money. How? You strategically give away your assets before you go to the nursing home, and then you say, I can't afford it. So you can't afford it because you gave the money away to your kids, so that the money would go to them rather than for yourself. So again, a lot of Medicaid too, while officially it's means tested, it's not really means tested. So if you just think about taking, we have like 20% of the budget plus 13, plus maybe another 4 percentage points from Medicaid, this is in fact the great bulk of federal welfare spending is actually currently not being tested, or barely being tested. Okay, so, I mean, it would be very easy to go and cut the size of the welfare state by 2/3 just by doing this. The welfare state could, without dealing with any of the things that scare people, like what if there's someone who's dead and starving in the streets, what have we done about them? Well, he's tested, well, he's starving in the streets, right? So he's eligible. You're starving, you're eligible. Right? So that would be an extremely narrow program. Like people who are starving can get the money. Right? That might be only 1% of the population. That would be very cheap. So cheap you wouldn't even notice it in all likelihood. All right. So anyway, we were to systematically replace all these expensive universal programs with cheap means-tested programs and make the modern welfare state almost unrecognizably small. In fact, many people would just say, where's the welfare state? I don't even see it anymore. I don't know anybody who gets money from the government anymore. That's what many people would say. So, now you might just say this arguably just counts as abolition of the Great Society. Because look, if we get rid of 2/3 of what we're doing right now, or 3/4, sounds like the Great Society is really over for practical purposes. So that is one possible reaction. Now, I, being a professor who can indulge in extreme views that they seem logical to me, I say, all right. So, being a professor, I'm not ready for office. I can follow logic wherever it goes. I don't need people to like me. So I'll actually tell you what I really think. So, I think that even these cheap means-tested programs are unjustifiably lax. Even these are going way too far and are unfair. Right, so here's a principle I'm going to put forward, and actually this is going to be a big part of that poverty through the blame book that I was mentioning earlier. So before government helps the poor taxpayer expense, it should at least verify two things. Right, thing number one, they're absolutely poor, not merely relatively poor. So before you're going to take money from a total stranger to help another total stranger, you should verify that the person you're giving the money to is in fact really poor in the eyes of normal human beings around the world and throughout history, not just poor according to the standards of our current incredibly rich society. Right, so if someone is starving to death, right, that's absolute poverty. Someone does not have cable television. That's not absolute poverty. Right, that's something that I did not have when I was a kid. I had 4 television channels with a black and white television, and the reception was so bad that we had to hold the antenna with our hands. So me and my brother, one person was on antenna duty at all times watching this TV. When your hands got tired, you use your feet. Right, so was I poor? I don't think I was poor by any sensible standard, although by the standards of what I see my kids doing today, I was destitute. All right, so anyway, before you are actually going to take money from a total stranger to give to another total stranger, you should at least verify that the recipient is absolutely poor and not merely relatively poor. It's not merely poor by the standards of an incredibly rich society, but it's poor by the standards of common sense. And secondly, you should also verify if they are absolutely poor, that they aren't morally responsible for their own poverty. Another language people don't like, but I will put it forward. So, what am I getting at here? So anyone seen the first world problems meme? It was one of my favorite memes. All right, so always this woman, I don't know who she is, but here she is. Right, so here are 4 first world problems. I'm so hungry, but I don't want to cook. Right. Staying with relatives, they don't know their Wi-Fi password. Mom asked what I want for Christmas, can't think of anything. And just use my Les Pandora skit for the hour, next song even worse. So 4 problems that the vast majority of human beings around the world throughout history would just think we're crazy. It's kind of a ridiculous crybaby are you that you say this kind of thing. Shouldn't you be ashamed to be unhappy when these are the problems that you have? So it is really my cross to bear to have to listen to these problems. All right. So now let's just take a look at the data on the prevalence of absolute poverty. So here's a claim that people don't like, but which I say is true. There's almost no U.S. citizen is absolutely poor. So we just take a look at the salary of the average janitor plus the average maid. So imagine you have a couple where the man is a janitor, the wife is a maid. And if you take a look at this, you'll see that they are actually far above the U.S. poverty line, far above. They are in fact in the 96th percentile of the world income distribution. So, American-made plus American gender, earning average income for their professions is at the 96th percentile of the world income distribution. This means that 19 out of 20 people on Earth are in families where they're making less money than this couple. So the idea is this is some kind of objectionable poverty. It's very hard to believe. So 95% of the population of the Earth is not on the verge of starvation. They are not destitute. By any normal standard, they are rich. They're not, of course, well, these aren't our standards. Well, our standards are not normal then. Our standards are unreasonable. Right now, we can also take a look at what is it really like to be classified as poor in the United States. So, I believe this is from the census. So, 82% of officially poor Americans, so Americans who are below the poverty line, according to our statistics, 82% say they were never hungry during the entire last year because they couldn't afford food. Right, so, not a single day do they claim to be hungry as a result of being unable to afford food. There are many other similar statistics saying as well. 18% said that they were hungry one or more days. That is a lot less than what most people think. Right, so we're talking about a fifth of the people who are classified as poor would even imaginably qualify as poor by normal standards throughout history or around the world. Because of course, normally, poor people are hungry. Right, throughout history and around the world, poor people are hungry. Interesting fact, in most countries on Earth, poor people weigh less than rich people. Right? In rich countries, the reverse is true. In the United States, the poor are more likely to be overweight than the rich. All right, now, just to get a further idea, so officially poor Americans, these are Americans who are below the poverty line. So we're not even talking about the couple where there's a janitor and maid. We're just talking about people who are officially classified as being below the poverty line. When you look at the data, you see that they actually enjoy many amazing luxuries. 41% own their own home. Really a lot more out here in Michigan based upon the housing prices I'm hearing about. 82% of poor Americans have air conditioning, which is astounding to me. So when I was growing up, we did have air conditioning, but we didn't run it. So we can't run it. We only run the air conditioning when it's 90 or higher. This was official policy. Maybe it was 85. It took a lot to get the air conditioning turned on when I was a kid. All right, 64% have cable or satellite television. What's so great about that? It's awesome. If you know what it used to be like, if you remember what it's like to have 4 channels and have to hold the antenna to get any reception, having cable or satellite television is amazing. It is an amazing luxury. It's one, in fact, that a billionaire living in 1980 would not approximate. And now, out of people who are classified as being officially poor, 64% have that. 40% own a dishwasher. 1/3 have widescreen TVs. So this is what being officially poor in the United States is actually like on average. Of course, this doesn't mean that there's actually no one who is actually poor in the United States, but it does mean that out of people who think of as poor, most of them, in fact, are not poor by a reasonable standard. Right? Furthermore, so even relative poverty is remarkably easy for Americans to avoid with responsible behavior. What kind of responsible behavior? It's not get a PhD or anything like that. Right? Responsible behavior, work with your young and healthy, save money, abstain from alcohol and drugs, don't have unprotected sex until you're ready to support a child, and buy insurance. None of this is rocket science. This is all common sense. And this formula is enough to avoid relative poverty. Right now, it doesn't matter. Right? There are many people look at this and say, well, I do all this, so what? Who cares if when we talk about horrible rich fat cats who should go and help desperately poor people, the desperately poor people have satellite television and dishwashers and own their own homes. It's a very different picture from what the words paint. We are talking about people who are dying of starvation. So when you give the rhetoric of desperate poverty, if you are then picturing people who are homeless, penniless, it's a very different moral picture than if you think about American poor as most of them actually are. Right, so it doesn't really matter. Sure it matters. So why should taxpayers have to support people who aren't really poor and or willfully make bad choices? And many people have an argument that, a country should be like a family, and in a family we take care of those who are worse off than ourselves, and so the country should work the same way. Now, there are a lot of people who want to say, no, a country's not like a family, terrible analogy, but the economist Stephen Lansford said, actually, let's just accept this analogy. Really? Well, suppose your brother engages in a lot of irresponsible behavior, and then lives in relative poverty. Do you think that obliges you to then go and give him 20% of your income? Your own brother. Right, your own brother. He abuts, your brother drinks heavily, doesn't hold down a job, and then comes to you and says, I'm poor, I'm relatively poor, you're relatively rich, give me some money, you owe it to me. What do you think about that? You say, what nerve? What nerve of this brother of mine? Maybe I will give him something out of the goodness of my heart if he reforms, contingent upon me monitoring his behavior and doing what I say. Otherwise, no, why should I have to help him? So that is the case of your brother. Now, here's another interesting case. Suppose that your parents decide they don't feel like paying for college anymore. Well, that sounds, why? Why did I do? Why did I get? What is for it? Well, one thing that you might say is, you owe me. You owe me a free college education. So if you're not party to the dispute, you might say, wait, why did they owe you? They gave you life, they supported you for 18 years, and now they also owe you another $100,000 in free stuff? How does that work? It seems very odd. Out of all of them, the arguments, the one that seems most sensible to me is the argument that you owe your parents support. It's just to reverse the argument I gave you. Look, I gave you life, I supported you for 18 years, now I'm poor, now you give me some money. That actually has a little bit, at least has some plausibility. And it was under U.S. law, back under the law of almost any country on earth, there's actually zero obligation to do anything to your parents under these terms. There's one country where there is, that I know of, Singapore. So in Singapore, before they will go to the taxpayers to help out someone who is elderly and poor, they find out whether they have kids, and they go to the kids and take their money. Which, if you're going to have to go and make someone support the elderly poor, it seems more fair to take it from their kids than from total strangers. At least some argument, look, you do owe this person. Give you life, support you for 18 years, seems like you should give him something. At least you are more in this person's debt than a total stranger who was not given life by your parents and did not actually get support from them for 18 years. So I'm going to be fleshing this out in a book. My view is that this is really just common sense, but there's so much propaganda making people feel like you are a horrible person unless you want to take care of anyone who's a fellow citizen who's below a government poverty line, that people don't really think about what's so odd about it. But again, the simple point of, if you are not morally obliged to support a close family member who is in these circumstances, why would you be morally obliged to support a total stranger? It's a hard argument to overcome. We can talk about that in Q&A. Okay. Now we get to key questions. So, why does the terrible Great Society exist? If it is so terrible to have a system where everyone is taxed to pay for everyone, and furthermore, it would still be a bad idea to have a simple means testing program because so many of the poor are not absolutely poor, and so often they are at least contributorily negligent for their problems. So, if the Great Society really is so terrible, why does it exist? And here I have a fairly simple answer. I think it's popular. Democracy is a popularity contest. So I have a feeling that people here think, we don't have a democracy, we have a republic. Well, that may be the theory of what we have is a republic. It is, in fact, in practice, very much a democracy. We notice. So when there are restrictions on government that are unpopular, they tend to just get forgotten conveniently. So if we know the history of the constitutional challenges to the New Deal, what really happened is one Supreme Court justice changed his mind about what was constitutional. That's what happened. All right. Anyway, so the Great Society is this simple answer is because it's popular. Now that just pushes the question back to the next one, which is, well, if it's so terrible, why would it be popular? Why would terrible stuff be popular? Well, we think of terrible stuff as being unpopular. We might have good stuff as being popular. Right? Here's my story. The Great Society is popular because, like many other charitable policies, the Great Society is emotionally appealing. It is emotionally appealing. It resonates with people's feelings. So the point of the programs is not to overwhelm people with logic, but rather to tug on their heartstrings. And actually, hopefully, to tug on the heartstrings so strongly that they don't even think about it. So yes, of course, this is what any compassionate person would want. And I'm not going to think about whether there's any cheaper way of doing the same thing, or whether it's really actually the most important necessary, or whether maybe the recipients actually might have something to do with their own problems. I don't worry about any stuff. I care, so I love these programs. Second, they're emotionally appealing, and furthermore, most voters are emotional rather than logical. So when you think about voters, you probably aren't thinking of Mr. Spock. You're thinking of someone who has a lot of strong feelings. Right? They have compassion, they have anger, they have fear. Right? They have the strong emotions, often very strong negative emotions. Also probably a lot of pride worked in there. Right? So this is the profile of the political activist in general. Someone who has a lot of feelings, and they want to express their feelings. Right. So I have a book called The Myth of the Rational Voter, Why Democracy is Chosen by Policies, where I flesh out these points at book length. I begin the point saying that there are many terrible policies that are nevertheless emotionally appealing, and then there are plenty of very good policies that sound terrible to people. And they sound mean, they sound harsh, they sound cold. Right? Never mind that they actually make more sense. I don't want to deal with them. That's what I'm saying. Actually, I do want to deal with logical policies. And then so that's one thing that I make in the book is that emotionally appealing policies are popular, right? And particularly many terrible policies are in fact emotionally appealing. And also in the book point out that most voters are emotional rather than logical. So the portrait of a typical voter is not someone who is completely calmed down. Right, step one, get completely calm. Then let's review the evidence. Then let's go and look at both sides. Then let's probably form an opinion. The end. People like that quite possibly aren't voting at all. They aren't angry enough to do anything. All right. So anyway, in the Myth of the Rational Voter, I try to explain the story in detail. And I'm happy to flesh out some more of the details during the Q&A. But let me just go over the high points. So first point. So in politics, unlike markets, individuals with irrational beliefs suffer almost no negative blowback. Right now, what does this mean? Well, think about this. So suppose that you go and you spend your own hard-earned money at, what's Home Depot's around here, I assume? Right, so you go and you spend your own hard-earned money at Home Depot without paying any attention to the quality of the products you're buying. Just go there and say, oh, that is like I buy that. You don't price shop. You don't go and make sure that what you're buying actually meets your needs. You don't make sure that you're buying that the drill bits are the English units rather than metric units, if you need the metric units. Just go and grab stuff. Yeah, I don't need to worry about this too much. Throw it all in the cart, spend your money on it, and then get home and say, maybe I should have actually thought before I bought. Okay, so when you spend your own money, if you don't calm down, if you buy emotionally, you wind up paying the cost. This doesn't mean that nobody shops emotionally, but it does mean that if you are willing to calm down and think about things more logically, you can save money. And on the other hand, the person who's right next to the aisle with you, who refuses to calm down, is going to wind up wasting a lot of money. Okay, so this provides an incentive for people to calm down and be more reasonable. And of course, it also gives an incentive for learning. So if you go and you act emotionally at first, you spend your hard-earned money, you get home, you're really disappointed. Next time I will double-check the package. Next time I will make sure that I know whether I want metric or English units for my drill bits before I buy those drill bits. So that's how it works for individuals. If you spend your money emotionally, you're going to wind up not getting really as much value out of your money. Or in fact, you may have some really bad outcomes. All right, now on the other hand, in politics, what would happen if someone were to go into a voting booth and vote at random? So, in a normal election with millions of voters, one person goes in there and just fills in some bubbles and leaves. What happens the next day as a result of their voting so radically? Nothing happens to them. Why? Because they're just one person out of millions. So unless any of those elections were decided by a single vote, the same thing happens to the person who takes a lot of time to vote reasonably, logically, as someone who just goes and votes at random, or someone who just goes and votes on them and say, look, who do I hate? All right, let's go and vote on hate. All right. Who's making me angry today? All right, let's vote on everyone who makes me angry, voting against them. As you may know, just being angry against someone does not actually mean they've done anything wrong. Although, presumably it's never happened. Presumably you're only angry at people for good reasons, but other people may have been angry at you for no good reason at all at some point in this experience. All right, so In politics, if you vote in a very, if one person votes in a very foolish way, the consequences are essentially zero for them. You say, no, but that's not true because everybody voted a bad way and the consequences would be bad. That's not the relevant question, is it? What is the relevant question for the individual? Right? In the same way that if one person drives a polluting car, does this noticeably change the quality of the air that they breathe? For just one person. You know, like if you go and drive a lot during the week, then at the end of the week you get out and say, the air seems more polluted now. Must be because I drove so much. No, it's not detectable. You're just one little person out of millions. So the effect is not noticeable. In the same way, if you go and vote for terrible policies, what actually happens to you as a result? Except in extremely rare cases, absolutely nothing happens to you. Of course, if everybody pollutes a lot, or everybody drives badly, then the consequences can be total disaster. Yes, the Nazis were elected on the slogan, National Socialism means peace. They really were. Right? So, the question is, what could one German voter in 1933 have done if they saw through all of these lies? What could one person have done? Really nothing. In fact, you probably would have been risking your life. One person goes and votes against the Nazis and someone finds out, then you, not only do you have to live through all the horrors of the Nazis, but you're also on the Nazi list of people who are their enemies. So it's a bad list to be on. All right. So in politics, unlike markets, individuals in the rational belief suffer almost no negative blowback. So this is one of the main themes of the book. People often like to think about politics as being like shopping. It's not like shopping at all. Politics is nothing like shopping. Rather, another way to think about politics is like a common pool. So imagine we're near a lake. Right, that's great. So we're near Lake Huron. Right, so imagine that everyone uses Lake Huron as their garbage dump. Some people don't do this anymore. Right, a few people. All right, so imagine that Lake Huron is our only water source, and everybody goes and takes all their garbage and throws it in. And then anytime you need to drink water, you can put your glass in and drink from that water. All right, that's what democracy is like. We take all of our intellectual junk, throw it in the common pool, and then we drink the consequences. But why do we drink the consequences? Because it's the only water supply, right? Unless you want to flee the country or something like that. Right? And of course, you can flee to another country where the voters are possibly even worse. All right. Now, one ubiquitous irrational belief that I review in my book is underrating the social benefits of markets. Now, let's see. So I don't want to go into our Q&A too much, but one big difference between economists and non-economists. So if you're in Northwood, the feeling you may think of all economists as being radically pro-free markets. This is not true. In fact, most economists are moderate Democrats. However, even among moderate Democrats, even among someone like Paul Kruger, Joseph Stiglitz, their view of markets is very different and more favorable than the general public. How so? Well, here's what when economists think about a market, they ask the question, could someone make money solving this problem? And if the answer is yes, then economists, regardless of the politics, say, all right, fine, well, then no problem solved. Non-economists, on the other hand, when they hear about people making money solving a problem, get nervous. Wait a second, it means someone is making money on this problem? I don't know about this. And so my mom was just in the hospital, and my dad calls me up and says, well, I figured out the whole problem here. The problem is the hospitals are run as a business. That's the problem. So my dad is a very conservative Republican, but still, the normal human suspicion of markets is much more powerful than any vague glimmer of free market economics that he may have picked up from talk radio. All right, now just to give you, just to give you a quick idea about economists versus non-economists on markets. All right, what do you think about having a free market in human kidneys? So you can legally sell your kidney.
Let's do it.
Yes, let's do it. Awesome. So hopefully that is the Northwood slogan. Northwood University, teaching every student that we should legalize the market of human kidneys. All right, now the economist's argument for this is very simple. It says, look, there are hundreds of millions of people who have one kidney they don't need, and there's also a whole lot of people on dialysis who need one kidney they don't have. So, if we just figure out a way to persuade the people who have kidneys they don't need to hand them over to the people who need them and don't have them, that would be great. Under current law, the current law says that they have to be donated for free in order for the transfer to happen. Gee, how would we normally persuade people to give up stuff that they don't want to give up because it's inconvenient or medical? Allow them to pay for it. Right? Allow a market. So if someone who needs a kidney can pay for it, can pay someone who has pay for it, someone else, and get it. Now, this idea sounds pretty crazy. Now, once I was actually at a dinner with a well-known Marxist economics professor and his Marxist graduate students. And I said, "Okay, so what do you guys think about legalizing the market of human kidneys?" The Marxist graduate students were interested but not convinced. Well, maybe. I see the argument. These are Marxist economists. And even they were enough of economists to see the logic. And then the professor said, "No, we have to do this. We have to do this." So here was a Marxist economist who was more in favor of a market that almost no non-economists were in favor. Why? Because he saw the logic. There are a bunch of kidneys that people have that they don't need. There are other people who need kidneys that they don't have. And people are not going to give a kidney to a stranger for free, but they're very likely to do it for a few $1,000s. At least there's a lot of people who do it for a few $1,000s, and that would save a whole lot of lives. So to put this together, there's almost no individual consequence of having a rational beliefs in politics, and there is a ubiquitous irrational belief in that underrating social benefits markets. Put this together, and you get what we have, namely trillions of dollars of poorly targeted solutions to sloppily defined problems. And that is the Great Society. Now, finally to answer the question which I was asked to answer. But are we stuck with it? Well, so if the rational voter is right, of course it's right. Right, if it's right, well, the Great Society will disappear if and when the Great Society becomes unpopular. And that's all we have to do. Just change the minds of most people. Well, that's easy, right? It's not actually easy if you learn some economics and then go home for Thanksgiving and do what should be done every Thanksgiving. Just turn it into an economics lecture. Now that we're eating turkey, let me explain to you the case for legalizing the market of human kidneys. I don't feel it's really Thanksgiving unless you have this argument. All right, so we're not conditionally stuck. Right. However, it is nevertheless very likely to remain popular. The Great Society is very likely to remain popular. Why is it very likely to remain popular? Because it sounds so good. It sounds so nice and warm and caring, full of solidarity and human kindness. We take care of everyone. And it's the disagreeable person saying that most people don't need to be taken care of. They can take care of themselves. Why do we have to have enormous taxes to pay for everybody? It's crazy. Listen to that guy. That guy is a problem. That guy is not fit in here. All right. So anyway, it sounds very good. And that's usually enough for the political survival of even the worst programs. As long as a program sounds really good, it's likely to remain around. All right. So we are probably unconditionally stuck. We can talk about this in more detail as we go on, or in the Q&A. But honestly, like the number of times where programs that sounded really good were abolished because the arguments in their favor were poor. It's really rare. Just wait a long time for samples like that. And while you're waiting, there's usually a bunch of new programs that sound good or a bad idea in the past. So that's reality. All right, so, but I don't want to depress everybody here, since you've put me all the way on here, so I will give you some glimmers of hope. All right, so we'll give you some glimmers of hope. First of all, the public doesn't have to completely change his mind. It is not necessary to convert every person in the country, or even to convert a majority of people in the country, so that they think the right thing. Right, of course, believe in me. All right. So why so? Well, so this mildly undermining support for Great Society programs would mildly restrain the program's growth. So if we were to just make people a little bit more skeptical, so a little bit more open to means testing, that does shift the politically most popular program in that direction, right? And that can be enough to restrain things, to move things in a somewhat less bad direction. So, for example, we think about Scandinavia as having ridiculously overblown welfare states, and they do, but they have still considerably scaled back the welfare states in recent decades. Right? And a big part of it is that enough people are being convinced that maybe things have gone too far, there is some collateral damage, and maybe we should scale things back. Actually, probably another big part of the scale back in the Scandinavian welfare state is just that they've had more immigrants, and Scandinavians only like paying taxes for blonde people. So that's probably another part of it. Okay, so mildly undermining support for Great Society programs would mildly restrain the program's growth, which, if that's, well, that doesn't sound that great. Remember, we are all just little people in an enormous society. So if you could go and change things just a little bit, you have You have done as much as you can really imagine most people doing. Think about even the most influential thinkers of the 20th century. Milton Friedman. Milton Friedman went around until his dying days saying, people hardly ever listen to me, I've had almost no results. Right? The number of people said, no, Milton did the following things. Talk about breath. Right? Well, yeah, but I could have done so much more. And I said, well, the glass is 2% full. Right? So it's better than 98% or 2. All right. Now something else. So as the U.S. keeps aging, Great Society programs will become so burdensome that the public might start to tolerate some excessive. So that is something else that might happen. Eventually, when expense gets to be extreme, then sometimes countries will say, all right, fine, we have to accept this bitter pill. Maybe we're not going to support absolutely everyone anymore. Although not necessarily, you might just go down the Greek route and just say, I'm going to hold my breath until other countries are going to give us money. Right? We were not going to cut our welfare state. We're not going to do it. So it seems that at some point this will lead to something, that will lead to some moderate restraint. Probably nothing like what I'm talking about, but I'll change that direction. Now, for the last really hopeful scenario is someone in this very room is going to grow up to become epically persuasive. There's someone in this room whose voice will be so amazing and who will be so great connecting with the American public that you will succeed incredibly where everyone else before has failed. So I hope that person's here. If you are, I will bow down and worship you one day. Until then, we will keep our fingers crossed. Thank you very much.